Hey guys, it's Daniel. The following is a quote from Jerry Cantrell on Mike Starr's death. Later in this video, I'm going to show you a clip from one of my interviews with Alice in Chains engineer Jonathan Plum, where he shares a funny story about Mike Starr. But first, the Jerry Cantrell quote. This is from Alice in Chains, The Untold Story. Quote, addiction is no joke, and we know that firsthand. We lost a good friend of ours to that. Mike deserved a better life. The first time I met him was in Burien, south of Seattle. My mother and my grandmother had just passed, and I didn't really have anywhere to go. I had met this guy, Tim Brannon, and he had invited me to come to his house and stay for a couple of days. I was kind of camped out in his basement, and he said this guy was coming over to play bass with us to try out for the band Gypsy Rose. Mike cruises up on a motorcycle, and he just looked really cool, man. He was a great guy. We got to spend about a week together. I didn't make the band personally, actually. Brock Graw did. I got cut. I think Mike lasted a little longer than I did. I met Layne very shortly after that, though. He introduced me to Sean, and we were talking about maybe getting together and jamming. He's like, do you got any ideas for a bass player? I was like, I met this guy, Mike Starr, who's really cool, and that's how everything started for us. I'm just thinking about all the good stuff, and there was a lot of it. We created some really amazing music together that will always continue to live. We're in the process of playing that and still living that. That part is always alive. And Mike was a big part of that. We were a bunch of rat kids, man. We kind of bonded together. We lived under a wharf at the music bank. We ran keys. Layne and I ran keys for TV dinners. Mike and Sean and I, we'd go to 7-Elevens at 4 o'clock in the morning to get the old dried up food to eat. We relied on each other. We were a family. Mike was my friend. I love him and I'll miss him. End quote. The following is a clip from one of my interviews with Jonathan Plum. If you want to see the full interview, it's linked below. Do you have any special memories from your time working with either Pearl Jam or Alice in Chains?
I do have a really funny Mike Starr story. So actually, this is one of the first things I think, my very first encounter with Alice in Chains with Mike Starr. And this was Sap. So they'd already recorded most of the parts. And I didn't know anything. I just was there, you know. And Mike Starr shows up and it was just Mike and I. And I remember, I think I helped him get his bass set up a little bit. And I was like, well, what are we doing today? And he's like, well, I got to play bass on a song that Jerry played bass on. And Jerry did a killer job. I'm totally happy with the bass part. But my mom, I know my mom's going to know that I didn't play bass on that and she's going to be pissed. And so I just, for my mom's sake, I got to go back and re-record the bass part myself. So he basically replaced it was the same bass part, but Mike Starr just played it himself. And he explained it to me that like he was going to be guilty because his mom would find out. I just thought that was really funny.
That's hilarious. That's so cool.
Mike Starr seemed to be, he was kind of like within the party kind of atmosphere as well.
And what about Sean Kinney? How was he like?
He was awesome. He was hilarious and he'd walk in, he was just like a hurricane, you know. Sean was great. Really fun. But again, like from my perspective now, he wasn't like someone that really like got to know me. He just was funny. He was like a comedian, you know. It was basically like hanging out with like a stand-up comedian all day long.